With what miracle did Moses part the Red Sea during the time of the Exodus, according to scientists? On the occasion, this happened about 1400 BC. On the occasion of the film Exodus, which refers to the story of Moses from the Old Testament book of Genesis and Exodus, scientists try to explain, based on natural phenomena, one of the miracles described in the Old Testament books. It was, of course, a series of miracles. It started before the parting of the Red Sea with the 10 plagues in Egypt. And they were all each foretold in detail before they happened. Let's keep that in mind. The film tells of the biblical story of Moses, who, chased by the Egyptians, led the people of Israel to the Holy Land later on, 40 years later, by crossing the Red Sea, which was opened for the Israelites to cross as if on dry land. The film adaptation was made in 1956, and now a legendary classical film, The Ten Commandments, starring Charlton Heston, and where the director chose to present the scene by literally translating the story of the Bible. When Moses and the people of Israel reached the shores, God intervened and miraculously opened the water for them to cross. This is after the rod of Aaron was stretched across the sea, and the sign of the cross made over the sea. When Moses and the people reached the shores, God intervened and miraculously opened the waters for them to cross. Then, as Pharaoh with his powerful army followed, the sea closed again with momentum, drowning all of Pharaoh's army. So Israel was saved, and the incident remained in religious history. Ridley Scott, who is directing this year's film starring Christian Bale, aspires to make things more natural. Thus, in the scene in question, God is not heard to intervene in any way, but on the contrary, Moses exploits a natural phenomenon, a large earthquake on the shores of the Red Sea, and the impending tsunami this time provide the solution. Israel crosses the Red Sea immediately after the quake, and water has been pumped before the tsunami, according to the scientists. Only this version cannot stand if the divine intervention is excluded, obviously, because how did Moses know when the earthquake would happen, and how did all the people manage to cross the sea before the tsunami struck at most 20 minutes after the earthquake? So you can understand, this doesn't really hold any water. So what could have happened then in ancient Egypt in the time of Moses? Is this Bible story completely imaginary, or did it really happen? No, the scientists answer, the waters of the Red Sea were indeed pulled away, and so the persecuted Israelites were saved. The Israelis were saved, the tribes of Israel. The relatively common tidal phenomenon explains exactly what happened. As Moses knew the area well, he could predict exactly when it would happen and when the waters would open the way for the people and their salvation. On the contrary, the Egyptian army, under the leadership of the Pharaoh, and did not know that the tide was returning, unable to predict it. The Egyptians drowned and the Israelis were saved. Something similar, scientists say, happened in 1798 when Napoleon the Great of France, with a small number of soldiers, attempted to cross the Gulf of Suez, again in the Red Sea. As they crossed the area where the water was forcing them to reach their ankles, suddenly the tide began to rise and almost drowned them. In any case, experts point out that if it was the tide that helped Moses and the people cross the Red Sea, then it should be considered the greatest in human history, the greatest event in human history, obviously. This I've translated for you from a Greek article, Diadrastika. And obviously, it's not just this that we have to take into account all the 10 plagues that were foretold in detail by God to Moses. And also the two tablets, the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, written by the finger of God himself, twice given to Moses. This was a tremendous miracle. And a lot of us, we should remember that we are not the first generation on earth. A lot of us do, without us knowing, have ancestors that have come from the tribes of Israel. I'll tell you what happened with me. This is, of course, not in the article, but it's my personal beautiful gift. You know that every time we open the Bible at random, the Lord God speaks to us. It's a miracle that happens 1,000 times a day if we open up the Holy Bible 1,000 times. Every time we do that, God shows us how quickly He's in our mind and our hearts. Now, I was going through a period of very great distress in my life with personal problems. And at one point, of the many points I was opening up the Holy Bible, one passage fell to me that said, "Why are you so afraid? Don't you understand I'm protecting you and leading you by the hand? Don't you know that I gave a promise to your ancestors that I was leading out of Egypt, that I would protect you?" So in that passage, God showed me how ultimately strong He is, His ultimate timeless love through thousands of years. And He also gave me the knowledge of the fact that my ancestors were of the tribes of Israel, that were among the Israelite tribes that followed Moses out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, and into the Promised Land. I mean, what kind of a God is that? So I'm telling you this because it doesn't only pertain to me. Because, you know, I always thought that my roots were Greek, but, you know, Greece was full of Hebrews at the time, even at the time of the Apostle Paul. Okay? He was going around all the synagogues of Greece because Greece was full of Hebrews at the time. So also Cyprus. We don't know where our ancestors came from, but a lot of us do have ancestors that are from the tribes of Israel. And we're all over the world today. Now, I'm not saying that all of us are from there, but whoever, obviously we're all very important. Each one of us is important, no matter what our roots are. We don't have to know them, but this was a very big present for me. And it did take place. God was leading them, and just as He leads us today. He does not ever leave our side. His eyes are always on us and into the deepest thoughts of our hearts and souls. God bless you. Anyway, leave your comments. Thank you very much for your support. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.